Hello, hello, Sacha Stone. What an honor to have you with us in this summit for Prenatal Alliance. And you're here with us today as an activist for life, for human beings all around the world. You have the New Earth Project, you have an international tribunal for natural justice. You are a human being minding all of the world, stepping into a better future. Can you tell us how you see pregnancy, as far as politics are concerned amongst nations? When will humans wake up to that gorgeous possibility of nurturing the human from the very start?
Well, salutations, Laura. Very happy to be with you. And I have to say to you and to the organizers of the summit, you couldn't have chosen a more propitious and auspicious time, given that by best accounts we are the end of the Kali Yuga occurs this very month. The biggest cycle of time against which we, define the fabric of our so-called reality. So salutations there, and I think that this is a very, very auspicious time. I am one of those who believes that the geometry of the living moment is perfect always in all ways, and that it can only ever be thus. I foundationally believe that the geometry of the living moment is perfect, and that God, so to speak, or the Alpha Omega, doesn't bring to us anything that we are unequal to. So whatever it is that we're facing at the individual level, and at the collective level is precisely what we have merited. And it is the contrast against which we must define our angelic supernature. And every living moment is that opportunity
This
to.
is fabulous to hear you saying that, because we are here to unite heaven and earth in us and outside of us. And you have been doing that. So that's why I'm so fascinated by matter. Spirit loves matter, loves to infuse matter, work with matter, hand in hand, and imbue matter with the light it carries. And matter is also light. Now, when I see so many women care for millennia, bringing on earth children who are, yes, they are well built, but gosh, so beyond what it could be, with a healthy way to start life and be receptive to the perfection of every moment, as you say.
Well, I think, Laura, that this is why I'm speaking to the geometry of the living moment being the key, because in this greater sense, culture is not our friend, as Terence McKenna reminded us many years ago. The psycho-civilizational wheels and the psycho-cultural wheels have been largely, if not entirely, predicated on survivalism, fight and flight, reflexivity, the need to survive, doom and gloom, scarcity, economics, blood economics, war, disease, poverty, and so on. So with that being the backdrop of our psycho-civilizational mania, when we bring everything down to the living geometry of the living moment, the great reckoning is that I, as the father, I, as the mother, can and must take the living moment as the reset. I am the one who is able to end the domino, the cascade in the blood of those familial traumas, those cultural traumas, those civilizational traumas, those patterns of incoherence, which do cascade through the blood song. But in any living moment, in the reckoning of the living moment as an actualized father, mother, couple, parents, we must be the new regenesis, point of regenesis. And it's to do with atonement. It's to do with us recognizing that we carry those familial blood songs, those cultural blood songs, that we carry those trauma patterns, and to reckon that we have also the power to eliminate them and to start anew. And I think that this great shift of ages that's upon us, where macroeconomic and macro sociopolitic are under catastrophic failure, it is also totemistic and symptomatic of what I'm speaking about, that we are all of us being forced into a reckoning. And the reckoning must be an atonement. And the atonement must be where we discover or rediscover or remember our supernature. So to me, the business of bringing souls into this plane of existence, or any plane of existence, come to think of it, is to do with the degree to which we are able to allow for that soul to slipstream into this field of expression, uninhibited, unencumbered, unimprinted with those old trauma patterns. And that to me is the whole point. It's a 0 point exercise. And we should stop imprinting children with bad syntax, with bad sounds, bad vowels, incoherence, and all of the invisible, the tapestry of noise that's taking place in the typhonic, in the symbiotic, in the waters of the womb as the mother is gestating the environment. This is where your work has been so important for so long, understanding that imprinting begins at that point,
Yes.
long before the creature sees the light of day.
Yeah, my idea is this amniotic fluid. See, when we're pregnant, we easily can become pleasers. We want to please everybody around. We're kind of afraid, not so sure, will I be up to the task even of raising a child? We don't even know that the child will tell us how to raise him or her. But in the amniotic fluid, we drink many gulps, many, of status quo. And
Mm.
fortunately, it starts there. Like the more I comply to the rules that nobody made them, but they're there. They're so strong. And and we have the freedom not to do so. We have the freedom for lyricism, for shamanism. We have the freedom to embrace life anew, leaving, as you say, all the traumas behind, because the present is what counts the most. That's where the power really is.
Yes, it is. The living moment can only ever be that. And it's also the living cross. It's also the foundational truism to which all the mystical traditions of all the mystical faiths speak to, that same immanent emergence of supernature in the living moment, the living witness, the living gospel, the living testament. These are the things that we need to, I believe we're being forced into that reckoning right now. Again, individually and collectively. We can no longer blame the past. We can't blame history. We can't blame anything outside of self. And then when we're forced into reckoning with self, we see that the idea of blame in and of itself is a franchise of the Catholic Church in that sense, a franchise of fear and guilt and shame. So these are the very incoherent patterns and geometries that we must now mindfully desist from imprinting onto the soul and the mind and the heart of souls coming into this world. Again, that to me is the profound nature of the work that you've been doing and that your circle have been doing. And I'm delighted that discipline, that extraordinarily powerful, if thankless discipline up until this point, is soon to become, I believe, the single most important discipline. I'll give you my take on it. It is my intrinsic knowledge that if we stopped imprinting children with bad syntax from the moment that they are born, birthed, and instead simply sang to them and in a sense just cradled them for the first few days and weeks, instead of trying to impose the tram lines, the psycho-intellectual and psycho-emotional tram lines onto those. Do this, don't do that, stop that, no, don't. All of that stuff, that staccato of imposition, which is just cauterizing their supernature, their quantum capacitance is being cauterized almost from day one, with not just mum and dad, but uncles and aunts and everything and everyone around as part of a symphony, a conspiracy of ignorance to do what? To prevent the immanence emerging from that being. That being would be speaking their star nation language within days and weeks if we allowed them to. They would be remembering. This phenomenon of the so-called indigo children, proves, palpably proves that blessed souls coming into this world are capable of playing Tchaikovsky at the age of 3, under certain circumstances. The AIDS children of Africa who were all born out of the 1980s and early 1990s, where the parents both died of HIV/AIDS in the AIDS camps, but the children that were salvaged from those ruined families were taken into care. Those children have become an extraordinary wave of beings in their 40s now who are incapable of getting ill. They have supernatural immune systems, despite the fact that they were born to parents who both had HIV/AIDS. So again, what does that tell us about morphogenesis, about the body's foundational ability to see an existential threat, adapt the genome accordingly, and become greater than the sum? And that's really, I think, how we need to see how we usher new generations forward into this plane of existence. We have to have a 0 point stance. We have to reckon with the fact that anything that we think we're imposing upon them is less than what they're bringing into the world in a great sense. And so, babes are closer to heaven than we are.
Yeah.
They're
And
remembrance.
your talk brings me freedom. We have this freedom, but we have to believe in the human body, in the human soul, in the beautiful dance that life is. I think our thoughts are so restricted to such little knowledge, but we have to believe in the impossible. I've known of women having a diagnosis of tremendous incompatibility with life in the womb, and the baby's born fine. How come? What was happening there? See, the way a woman embraces life and dances with life during pregnancy will already orchestrate the way the genetics will start functioning, making it even better elements in that genetic that might not have been so wonderful, but it can become wonderful. It can become wondrous. We have that freedom.
Indeed. I would say another thing, another big consideration is the fact that it's clear that certainly for the last century, emphasis subsequent to the Second World War, 50s and 60s, the kind of nuclear age onward, the age of age of the pill, the age of the nuclear age. We've seen a systemic infiltration of physicality, of physiognomy, of biology with synthetic molecules.
Yeah.
And that is a huge consideration here. So the incoherence, mind, body, and soul that many, many generations of humans have suffered to and suffered by subsequent to this introduction of synthetic molecules has been quite palpable. And that's caused huge problems. Now, by the grace of God, we see Bobby Kennedy in the new administration in the United States, and that is the only one that matters, beginning to slay that particular Leviathan with glyphosates and fluoridation of water
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
aerosol chemtrailing and so on and so forth. I think that that's going to also, we're going to see a sea change in the next couple of years, again, just in the foundational bio and geochemistry of the world. And that's going to have a huge, palpable and positive impact on people. And emphasis young mothers, bringing souls into the world.
Yeah, we are here to celebrate life. That's what I love about New Earth. It's a constant celebration of the very best in knowledge and understanding for cosmetics or for history. I mean, so many lies. We've been having, what, 7,000 and some years of lies and lies about history? It's time to understand our grandeur. We are great entities, and our children can manifest that. That's why governments have to wake up. I remember the singer, the musician Kitaro in Japan, with the big ponytail, music from those pianos, synthetic music. He had a concert in Tokyo in the 90s, and about 8,000 people were there. All pregnant women paid nothing. He made it a point that art needed to welcome those who are waiting for the future.
I think that's fantastic. Thank you. I do my touring. I'm mid-tour right now in the United States, and I don't like charging tickets, so I do my tours without charging tickets, and I don't rattle cans either for donations. It makes them very, very difficult to finance them. Almost impossible. In fact, my producer here would be wagging a stick at me and going, "They're absolutely impossible. This endless touring." But things like veterans, things like students, things like farmers, pregnant women. When you get down to it and you look at all the vulnerable demographics in the world, there's very few left. There's like the white patrician banker, Wall
Hmm.
Street bankster, jackal, and then everyone outside of that, every other demographic outside of that is a vulnerable demographic. And the truth of the matter is that we are just incredibly vulnerable. Most humans, most of the time, are in a state of abject vulnerability and subjected to the wiles and the fancies of both visible and invisible masters. And I hope that that age, I don't hope, I think the New Earth is all about recognizing that that age is in transition now, and that there is a full spectrum reclamation of foundational human dignity. That is the critical piece that is happening. And I think that technology is helping us. I'm one of those less cynical than most who believes that AI is a technology. It's a necessary aspect of Ahriman in that sense, but it's a very necessary and needful element of contrast, again, against which we are forced to define our angelic sentient
Hmm. It's a
supernature,
tool. If it's a tool, it's fabulous.
without a doubt, without any question of doubt. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, yes, you bring hope. You've been speaking with people of power in the arts, in politics, and are they optimistic for this new era starting now? You talked about the Kali Yuga going away, the Surya Yuga, the age of the sun is coming, something that will bring forth light in all levels. We're here to inspire each other, and not just human beings. I'm here to inspire plants and animals, and of course babies. We're here today because of World Pregnancy Day. Just stop at the making of a human being. I remember there was in the library of my father the making of a president, the making of, well, we were made in the womb. Was it a womb of love? Was in the womb of joy and hope? Because those are necessary ingredients.
Well, I do spend an awful lot of my life meeting with leadership, so to speak, in one milieu or one echelon or another. But mostly in recent days or months, it's been hereditary leadership. So in the
Mhm.
last 6, 7 months, I've spent at least 4 months of that time in Central and Southern Africa, for instance, meeting with chiefs and kings and kings of kings and these kind of aggregate archetypal icons that carry the flame forward of the culture of the society. And so I get an interesting litmus in speaking with world hereditary leadership and interfacing with them. I'm getting a sense of feedback from them that there is a new kind of frisson in the air. There's a whole new kind of energetic that is beginning now to surface. That certainly I could speak about Africa, that the new generation of African politicians, even, not just hereditary leaders, but actual politicians who've been groomed in a sense for power. They're a new breed. They are not looking to Rome. They're not looking to Caesar. They're not looking to the Citadel of Geneva or United Nations in New York. They're not looking to the Bank of International Settlements or the IMF. For instance, this withdrawal of USAID by the Trump incumbency, personally, I think it's an incredibly healthy thing. And this notion of interdependence was always utterly toxic. Interdependence was a globalist fantasy. It was a George Soros fantasy to force interdependence onto the developing nations so that we could continue to ransack their
Exactly.
resources and feed the citadel. So the fact that Washington, the new Washington, is now about to disassociate and disentangle itself from that foundational interdependence complex, I think is going to see a huge recoil. I'm speaking to hereditary leaders. As I mentioned to you, I was on last night for a couple of hours with His Majesty, the Sovereign King of the Sovereign Kingdom of Hawaii, who's one of the more remarkable and recognized hereditary leaders in the world. Um, these leaders are agreeing with the fact that interdependence must now leave. They want to reclaim, restore not old thrones and old empires and old kingdoms, but for sure the land that was ransacked, the gold that was ransacked, the collaterals that were stolen. There needs to be an atonement. There needs to be an audit. There needs to be a reckoning. We can't not have that atonement or that reckoning. And in this language of diplomacy and intellectual diplomacy, it comes down to the doctrines of discovery, comes down to the Vatican complex 500 years ago, giving the crowns of Europe the license in the name of God to go forth and conquest all the lands and maraud and holocaust the black skin, brown skin, red skin, yellow skin peoples. And the white skins were also sacked. The Saracens and the pagans were also sacked by these same forces. So let's not forget, it's a white skin dilemma as well. But here we are. Here we are, end of the Kali Yuga, great shift of ages, and there is no one to blame. We've all played the
Yeah.
internecine games. We've blamed the Catholic Church. We've blamed the government. We've blamed Big Brother. We've blamed mum and dad. We've blamed everything and everyone outside of self. Here we are forced, each of us, into the great reckoning. And I think this is truly where the emergence of the grace of God is to be found.
Yeah. It was us. So there we were. And we were learning and relearning. When I said about 7,000 and some years, okay, all these experiences came, but now we can make the best of it. And we can be. And we advocate at Prenatal Alliance the best of health, but a health that would be not just the physical, but an integral health from soul to cell. And as the portal of this universe here is the woman's womb, let all wombs be welcoming places.
Indeed, couldn't agree more with that. I'm interested to know where and to what extent mainstream education, so to speak, that education complex is now prepared to carry forward the flame, for instance, that you and others have been keeping alit. Do you have a sense, let me ask you the question, do you feel that mainstream academia, so to speak, is in a state of readiness now to begin to have these deeper, wider, broader conversations about perinatal and about typhonic consciousness, consciousness of the unborn child, and about how we can now really dial ourselves up culturally, psycho-civilizationally into a higher expression of sentient species connected to how we look at the business of birthing and
Yeah. I
consciousness.
think we're on the brink of it, but we're not there yet. A very dear friend in Greece, a judge, she's in her 80s now, organized a whole movement to have in high schools all over Greece teachers teaching a different kind of sex education, not just against infections that can be transmitted through sex, not just avoiding conception, but also what about one day conceiving, bringing that subject. And unfortunately, the LGBT movement said, stop, we're not represented in this polarity, man, woman. So they had to stop after 1 week. Many debates on TV. She told me that, she says, perhaps this was the best propaganda of it all because I was in every TV show answering to the audience. Because, yes, we have the LGBT people and they are important, but they're not ruling that I know of. I mean, who needs to be ruling? Let life rule. And life needs polarization, needs a sperm and an egg. And in all these strange conceptions, we always either forget the father or the mother because two women want a baby or two men want a baby. We are not here to forget anybody. And a sperm contains a huge amount of memory, so does an egg. Not just transgenerational, but also about the human being that was there. So it's a huge, we know more about matter now and the infinity in the infinite spaces in the very, very small universe. And so you see, tentatives are being made. This was about less than a year ago in Greece. Here in Brazil, we have a center just for the well-being of pregnant women, but it's one in the state of São Paulo by the sea. It's gorgeous. There's not one stethoscope, but it's in San Sebastian, that's the name of the town, and women can go all day long, the very rich, the very poor. It's for free, it's from the government. But this is one tiny example, needs to be broadcast to the whole world with choirs, with gardens. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, within the burgeoning metric that we've been developing as the New Earth Project, the template, which certainly will be exemplifying in Tennessee, which we consecrate in midsummer this year, and in Africa and elsewhere, also in Lombok in Southeast Asia. We've decided to take forward a big project there, residential project and community project. So we're now scoping out the capacity to contain thousands of people within the community, which incidentally is now formally a diocese. So we've established the ecclesiastical protections and privileges afforded the Vatican. We've afforded those same privileges to ourselves. And our law commission have established that framework. It's very robust. It's pan-global, it's planetary, and it allows for our diocese to be protected fully in all the works that we're doing in technology incubation, in education, and so on. So every aspect in that sense of the New Earth, the greater New Earth ecosystem, is now its own discrete, irrevocable, universal trust, set within the greater diocese. So we've been establishing the last year, been working to establish that framework so that as Babylon falls, so to speak, which it is in so many ways, we have this alternative tram line that can plop onto and continue unabated. And that includes things like sovereign banking and having our own treasury and being able to have that internal circular economy. So these are all the various things that we are working on. But I can tell you that within the so-called educational, educative element, perinatal and conscious birthing, understanding, well, not understanding, but creating a space wherein and whereupon this new emergent discipline can fully flower is an absolute priority, absolute priority. So I know that we'd be reaching out to you almost certainly later this year to help define what does that metric look like
Hmm.
in the universal sense. Like how do we have that same metric deployed in Japan as well as in
Yeah.
Mozambique as well as in Ecuador? That becomes for me a very interesting question because we do have to create a generic format, a generic metric in that sense.
And it's possible. And New Earth University has already a big department where all these ideas are discussed, and of course classes are given, and professionals, and also not just professionals, human beings that are ready to step into that dimension of really minding the beginning. In quantum physics is one of the first things they say: the beginning contains the end. Just mind a good beginning, mind it, and all the rest will evolve differently.
Very
But
good.
with a flawed beginning, there's so much to repair, so much time and money spent.
Well, indeed. Well, that in a sense you've just described perfectly the drama facing us because our civilizational wheel in that sense did kick off with incoherence. It was a departure from God's law, from reason, in a great sense. I mean, I think that's what the apocryphal story of the Great Fall alludes to, and it's why that Great Fall and other cataclysmic and catastrophic stories like the great deluge, that's why in all of the creation myths there is such foundational trauma in the genesis point of those stories. There was a departure from God's law, a great fall. I mean, I wonder if that indeed was true or if those storylines were just threaded in after the fact. It's very hard to know, but what I do know is that we own the living moment, the living present, and that we, as sons and daughters of God, are the ones who are mandated with determining all futures, all outcomes, in accordance with how we can stand in truth and stand in honor in the living moment.